It's been a year since I've been doing this series, and honestly, it's been pretty crazy. So, you know what? Let's celebrate it all by just doing a full circle and talking about our ridiculous, embarrassing stories during our childhood. Yeah, that's it. This is probably the shortest introduction for this series, but it's literally like part one, just us talking about our most embarrassing moments, so there's no need for like any weird, creepy, insightful thing like I tried doing last time. Although I totally could if I wanted to, and don't you dare challenge me because I will force it on you. Enjoy. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Stop right there! You think you can just skip over sponsor time? Oh! Well, you can't. You can't ever skip over sponsor time. So I have a Ko-fi and a Patreon that you can donate to if you want to support us financially. That's legitimately all I have to say. Watching these videos is enough support for us, but if you want to do more, boom, there's that. That's literally it. Yeah. So I used to be a big fan of a little known series that you may not know about called Five Nights at Freddy's. It's a indie game where you get attacked by animaniacs, blah blah blah. You know what Five Nights at Freddy's is. But do you? You see, it wasn't the actual game that scared me, although the VR game is generally terrifying. It was the lore, the theories, and the tons of Easter eggs that would terrify the ever-loving shit out of me and my friends, who would discuss the crazy shit in this game. Keep in mind, this was before FNAF was what it was today. This was when the first game was out for a little while, and just got popularized by people like Markiplier. Back when game theory was actually respected. It's kind of crazy how long ago that was. How long ago was when I adored this series. I mean, 2014, 2015, being the year this crazy man released a shitload of games, all being hyped around my friend groups as we would discuss what was happening within this series. You see, this magnificent, sexy man had a whole ass story within this plain ass game, where it's just a static image with a screamer that just angers you after a while. The community behind this game and the game creators' vague yet effective strategy of Easter eggs and hidden lore that would get everyone to be intrigued by this game. The story behind it is incredibly convoluted and is pretty fucked up when you think about it. I mean, child murder and the thought of everlasting existence within a cold, desolate machine wanting revenge for what it's been through. I mean, that's barely even the tip of the iceberg, as the game theories at the time of making this video has made 40 videos discussing its lore. What the hell, man? Like, you good, Matt Pat? You good? Well, anyways, the creator would subtly give us hints to how this world works. It would prove to work well for his franchise over the year, with the fourth game being the final nail in the coffin until it wasn't. These first four games are legendary experiences when it comes to the story that you would have to dig for, since it was never clear what was actually happening. There would be times where the game would show you things, but it was with no context, so the community would have to wove the series together. Watching what the community came up with was mind-blowing, and finding out about the Bite of 87 was just shocking, although it was proven to be the Bite of 83 if I'm not mistaken.
Was that the Bite of 87?
I don't know, it's been like years since I've even cared about this series, which reminds me that the whole summary isn't what's actually scary about this game. What's scary about this franchise is how it got exploited to its final drop by the community and creator. Seeing the commercialization wasn't even that bad at first until years later, where it would develop into a really dedicated fan base of a whole generation just hungry for this series. While the original fans like us moved on, there was a whole nother fan base who came to replace us. But the difference between us and them was that there was merchandise. I mean, my 13-year-old brother has a FNAF shirt. If that doesn't tell you how big this series got, then I don't know what will. I mean, it's not that I hate this. Man's making dough that he rightfully deserves, but the series just gives off a different vibe now. I mean, I don't know when the furry porn came into play, but I'm pretty sure it was after the series should have ended. You see, after the fourth game, the series was far from over. It still kept going on and on and on. It was going to get its own movie. I mean, what the fuck? A franchise about dead children being stuffed in cramped metallic costumes being milked by its owner to millions of children around the world just doesn't really feel right to me. I mean, honestly, don't mind it, but it is kind of a stark reminder of the dark reality around us. Nobody notices the dead children inside the costumes and only see the fun-loving killing machines on the front. It honestly just feels like some kind of a metaphor about how people are distracted by the entertainment around us and not seeing the dark, terrible truth inside of it. Hashtag me too.
I guess the first topic I'm gonna get into is it's gotta be your favorite, everyone's favorite. Oh, hold on, Chimp. Peep out the new hat. Yeah. Is that Nike? Oh, that's Nike? Okay, anyway, I got off topic. But the first topic, it's gotta be your favorite. Avatar Last Airbender. Probably, I think it didn't really scare me. It just kind of resonated with me. Because if you remember, if you're an OG, from the first childhood trauma, I talked about Milo and Otis and that owl. I don't know if there's any footage of that because the movie's old and there's like a lot of drama that happened after that. But pretty much there was an owl and I thought the owl was gonna eat Milo, and Milo's like the main character of the story. So like as a kid I was like, oh, I don't really like owls. Like owls give off that weird creepy vibe where they do the whole neck turn thing and like, yeah, no. But in this scene, in Avatar Last Airbender, they were trying to get some secrets about the eclipse for the Fire Nation. Spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure you've already seen it. If you haven't, then you deserve to be spoiled, not in a good way. But yeah, they were going to get some information on the eclipse and stuff like that. And Wan Chitong, the owl man, he was just like, his neck stretched like all the way out. And he was weird, like, it was just a weird vibe, the way he talked. It wasn't like an echo, but I don't know, it's just like something about his voice.
Donshay University.
You should leave the way you came, unless you want to become a stuffed head of anthropology.
But basically, he's like an owl spirit that knows 10,000 things or something like that, but he knows a lot. And he's kind of just eyeing Aang in the group. He doesn't really trust them. And it turns out, obviously, they're trying to take the information about the eclipse to use that to attack the Fire Nation. And he didn't want them to abuse the knowledge that he gave them, or that he allowed them to go through his library. So he ended up, like, after they finally got out of the library, when they lost Appa, because, like, there's a finale, right? But being a kid, I didn't know that because I never got to watch it.
So when it comes to things that scare me back in the day, there wasn't very much that did, but I do have a bit more that did terrify me as a child. So I used to have a Nintendo 64, and I used to play Mortal Kombat 4 on there. It wasn't really the violence that got to me, but there was one stage that I was afraid to play on, and it's called the Elder Gods Arena. And it's like this weird stage where it's like there's like 4 blue faces like around the arena, and I used to hate looking at those faces. Every time I would get that stage in like the arcade mode, I would turn the game off. There was also the stage with the trees that had the faces on them. I'm not sure if it was in Mortal Kombat 4, but there was also a fatality to where like you knock the opponent into the trees and the trees would eat you or something. I didn't like it. Needless to say, I didn't like it. So this one's kind of a silly story. It involves a movie I have never seen, and it's called Kindred the Embraced. And I remember, I've never seen the movie, I don't even know what it's about, but I remember I was looking for like a game or a movie or something, and I opened one of the drawers in like the movie cabinet, and I just see the box art, and I immediately just closed the drawer. And the box art just scared me for some reason. I look at it now and it looks pretty stupid, but as a kid I couldn't even look at it. I was afraid to open up that drawer because I was afraid the movie would be in there, and I was afraid that I would see the case again. What is that even supposed to be, like a bat? A vampire or something? It looks stupid. It's a dumb story. So another absurd story. I grew up playing the original Super Smash Bros. On the Nintendo 64, and I just, for whatever reason, I would reach a certain point in classic mode where you fight the fighting polygon team, and I just got scared of them for some reason. I think my reasoning was because I was afraid. I think as a kid I was like afraid to fight certain computer players for some reason because they were too good. Man, I must have been a dumb kid back then. Like, it's so absurd to look back on it. Just the things I was like, that just put me off. I don't know. Weird story.
I miss this series. Like, we get to talk about traumas that aren't traumas, but they're kind of traumas, you know? Kind of like, seeing the fucking Easter Bunny for the first time at the mall, and you just sit in his lap and he's like, smile for the camera. Anyway, so we all know that Billy and Mandy, the Adventures of Billy and Mandy or whatever, like, that show is messed up, but it was so good. And I loved it as a kid. And, you know, it was interesting. You know what's even more interesting? The part that terrified me was the fact that Billy had a spider son. And I don't blame Billy for trying to kill that fucker, but Jesus. Like, I hate spiders. Fucking that one episode where he's in the basement, he's like, hey dad, I just laid thousands and thousands of eggs. And then he turns around and he has like a whole bunch of fucking eggs in his butt or on his butt. I don't fucking know. And also the fact that he's supposed to be a dude. Like, they bring that up in that episode, but like, I'm like, huh? Anyway, I hate spiders, and it's all stemming from that episode. Yeah.
So I'm kind of cheating when talking about this one, since I've never played the original till recently. But hear me out, I played the DS version. Okay, yes, I understand that the experiences I faced in this game are extremely different from the ones who played the original. But I don't care, and I'm going to talk about the people afraid of it anyways. Plus, I actually see what people are talking about, and no, it's not about the iceberg. Okay, it's about the iceberg, a little bit, but just a couple things from it, okay? I need to explain what the iceberg even is. It's basically the lore of a game, but in an iceberg. The top being what everyone knows, while the bottom is what only a few people know. We're going to be talking about the personalized copies, which is the theory that every game of Mario 64 was different from the other. Yeah, I know it sounds stupid, but hear me out, because I'm about to blow your mind like I did last time. So these personalized copies are actually just people scared by different things in the game, which I honest to God fully understand. I mean, this game is unintentionally terrifying at times with the fog distancing and outdated graphics, main example being the one everyone feels uncomfortable in, which is Red Dry World, where this photo render in the background creeps people out like crazy. I mean, it's a city tinted with a water filter, but it feels unsettling, right? There's also this maze level where the whole level just feels so off. The structure of the level creates such a weird and uncomfortable atmosphere. This image that I got from this level was something that just it makes me feel scared. I don't know. There's something so off about this game. The EO looks terrifying, and apparently this whole game is a Freemason ritual. I don't understand who came up with that, but there's also a bunch of other things in this game. Like, there's this creepy laugh that plays at Boo's mansion. Like, what? This creepy unending staircase, creepy designs all around. There's so many different things that just creep me out. When it comes to When it comes to all the unintentionally creepy things in this game, the whole personalized copies theory kind of starts to make a little bit of sense. Not in terms of personalized copies, but in terms of people having different experiences with being scared of this game. There's a lot of other things that creeped out other people to where they would share their experiences that would be a bit more exaggerated, since our memory tends to exaggerate things. Then those people have completely different experiences that they share, and then boom, Super Mario 64 just became the creepiest game of the year without even wanting to. It's not even the game's fault. It was one of the first 3D games, which would make the level designs a lot more abstract, and the textures would be a lot more all over the place, since this is literally the first time they had to deal with something like this. So at the end of the day, it's really just your mind playing tricks on you. Anyways, it's about time I turn this into some kind of metaphor about the real world. Real fear comes from a lack of understanding. Yeah, I know, that sucked. Wait a second. A distorted memory can make you fear something that just comes off as unintentionally scary, and you may be wondering what this has anything to do with the real world. Well, let's just say it's about something that I'm personally afraid of, which we'll get to soon enough.
I don't know. For me, at least, when like going back to like childhood, like as a kid, I don't know why, and like y'all are gonna laugh, and that's cool, cause I laughed, cause I had to like Google it. I had to like do a lot of research to end up finding it, but it was a really old episode. I want to say like season 3, episode 4 of Blue's Clues. Now I know instant reaction is, someone come get this man. It's like, why is he afraid of what scares you in Blue's Clues? Now this is kind of cheating because it didn't necessarily scare me. It was just more weird. Like, I just got a weird, eerie vibe from it. And I didn't know how to, like, I don't know, like, even now, like, I rewatched it and I was like, why was that so weird? Like, for me, it didn't, like, bother me now, but it was just, like, not, like, that's justified. Editing Julien. But here's a little clip. But pretty much, for the most part, it was, like, Blue and Steve. This is the OG. Y'all probably don't know nothing about that, but it's OG Steve and Blue, and they were like, they heard some weird sounds, and Steve's walking around the house, and he ends up finding the sound, and it turns out to be wind chimes. And I don't know why, but just the wind blowing and the wind chimes going off, and they're looking around like all, I don't know, just confused and puzzled. It just brought like that weird sense of like, I don't know, there's just something ominous about it. Like, it just, why, like the sound of the wind chime brought up like vibes of just the unknown. And as a kid, you don't really know a lot about anything. So it just brought up a lot of stuff I just didn't like just not knowing anything. And then like he went on some little adventure to go find like a golfer with like the bucket and pail, or the shovel and bucket. I think it was pail. But they went out and they found some gopher, and then they were chilling. I thought it was an otter at first. I had to rewatch it, and it was a gopher. Then they come back and like they're like trying to fix like the audio on some movie for like Salt, Pepper, and Paprika, I think, their kid, yeah. And then you're just going through the sounds, and like watching that scene, like where Blue was hitting the buttons, and then they went and like fixed the movie sounds or something like that. That like unlocked a memory I forgot I had. Like that was weird. Like I don't know. It's like weird sound effects that don't fit. Like the balloon will pop, but it sounds like a toilet flushing. So like they're going through trying to figure out like to put the right sounds at the right parts of the. I don't know. It was just weird. Like none of it made any sense. And the entire time it's like dead silent. There's no background music. Steve's not saying anything. Blue's not saying anything. It's just like did that sound fit? Then nothing for like 45 seconds. And then you hear some kids, no! And then they just do it again. And it's like, why is it so quiet? Like, if I just sat here and just... So how are you guys doing today? Good. Okay, that was getting really weird. I had to stop. But like, it was so quiet. And then that with the wind and the wind chimes, and then at the end of the episode, everyone's sitting on the couch and like they're gonna watch a movie. But like looking at it as an adult now, watching it, Steve is sitting there on the couch with a bunch of non-existent characters, and it just got super sad and super like weird. Like it was like kind of depressing, to be honest. Like he's sitting there, and then he's got like Blue and like Shovel and Pale and Paprika and his parents or her parents, I don't remember. And the Gopher was sitting there on the couch, but he's sitting there just looking into the camera like, and then everyone else is just staring at you, and I'm just like, this was weird. Why did I watch that? Like, as a kid, it was fine, but rewatching it, I should have just did this video off of memory, because rewatching it was just, I don't even know, it was just weird. I was like, is he okay? Like, someone needs to check in on Steve to make sure like homie's okay, because like I'm worried about him.
So usually in Mario games, people usually talk about the piano in Mario 64 that used to scare them to death. And that got me too. But there's another thing that kind of traumatized me as a little kid, and it was in Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii. So there was one level I hated called Bowl Breeze Galaxy, and you basically have to use the Wii cursor to blow the bubble so like Mario doesn't fall in the poison swamp. I hated that. I didn't like the controls for that map because it just felt finicky and it was very easy to die. But the main reason I hated that level the most was because when I died, you'd see like this very gruesome death animation of like Mario sticking his hand out of the swamp like that. That's gruesome. That's terrifying. I hated that. I never wanted to play that map because I was so afraid of dying in that level. It was messed up. So the final game that kind of traumatized me as a kid was an old arcade classic called Sinistar. So I was about like, 8 years old at the time, and we had this old arcade machine that had like a bunch of games on it, and of course Sinistar being one of them. I looked at it and I'm like, cool, you shoot asteroids. So I'm shooting asteroids, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I hear this dude say, I am Sinistar. and I froze. I think my parents were playing on it before because the volume was cranked up to like the maximum. So when he said that, it was basically like you could hear it throughout the entire basement. He was practically screaming at me. But it's like the thing about Sinistar is that he has multiple voice lines, and one of them being "Run, coward!" And as soon as he said that, this dude charges at me from off screen, one-shots me, and then laughs at me. That was the first time I had ever played Sinistar, and that was also the last time I ever played Sinistar. Like, I remember having nightmares about that. Like, it was serious. I hadn't played the game for like another 10 years since that happened. It was serious, man. So, now for my final topic. I would like to talk about Toy Story. I saw Toy Story 4 when it had first come out in like the first week, and you know, saw the ending. It was pretty emotional, pretty sad, but as I was leaving the theater, I was thinking, there is no scene in any Toy Story movie that will ever top the furnace in Toy Story 3. Yeah, the scene where they're all headed towards the fire, and then they're like, what are we gonna do? And then all you get is just a look. Everybody just looks at each other like, well, yeah, as I was remembering the scene, I'm like, who would allow this? In a world where, I remember kids were crying when Optimus Prime died in the first Transformers movie, and then you throw this scene at them where they're all holding hands before they all get burned to a crisp. Like, this is probably the most manipulative scene I've seen in a kid's movie. Like, it's so messed up. It's so dark. Yeah, and that's really all that that kind of like got to me as a kid, honestly. I don't really know how to end this segment.
Another one that like scared the shit out of me when I was little, Mr. Meaty. Mr. Meaty was a screwed up show too. Like, I don't even know how that got aired. Not only did it make me scared of like these puppet things, there's puppets, I'm stupid. Anyway, 2 episodes from that. One where they, what is it? Josh and what's the other guy's name? Anyway, Josh and his friend Parker, I think his name's Parker, they go into the freezer and they're like, oh, we need to find meat or whatever in here, and then they look into the very back of the freezer and they see the old owner of that place, and they're like, oh yeah, let's thaw this guy out. Homie, the guy was blue and in a wheelchair. Please just put him back in the freezer. I'm begging you. And then, also, that one, episode where, what was his name? Parker, I think. He consumed partially raw meat and he got a tapeworm. And he was, I always was scared that I would get tapeworm. That stems even now, like, fucking, if I go somewhere and even I like rare meat, but like, not to the point where it's just like, I don't know. Anyway, the fact that he had to get the tapeworm out with that, fishing hook, disgusting. And the guy fucking eats it. Like, how did this show even get on? How? Somebody please tell me. And then this is my last one. It's kind of depressing, but kind of not. Anyway, so those old-timey cartoons, I know, this was Casper. I had this whole collection of 100 old-timey cartoons, like the black and white ones. One of them was Casper. And I think he was, like, hanging out with a dog or something that was alive. And he's, like, befriending the dog, And I don't know what happened. But I think at some point that dog died and Casper was, like, crying. And it wasn't really scary. It just kind of made me realize at the age of 4 that, hey, human beings are, like, destined to die at some point. And I'm scared. I'm terrified of dying. Yeah. So I don't know, it's kind of depressing. Is it a drama? I think it's a drama. I think it's a drama.
So you're gonna need a bit of background before I even talk about this part. Probably not the best idea to tell the internet this, but I'm afraid of mascots. Which, yes, it includes these things. Oh god, what am I doing? So the reasons why I'm afraid of them, it comes from the fear of the unknown mixed with the uncanny valley. Kind of like the reason why anthro characters just make me feel uncomfortable in general, because they always seem off even when it's a good design, except when it comes to mascots, it is way worse since they are real and something about them always makes me feel gross. I don't know, the thought of an inhuman heavy costume being worn by somebody has always made me feel quite uncomfortable. I mean, anybody could be under there and they're probably not in the greatest mood since it's really hot in there and they're probably sweating and shit. It's just ew, and I can't even. I feel like I just offended all the furries. I'm sorry, you guys, but you all freak me out. There's nothing you can do about it. You know what? Let's just get to the thing I was going to talk about. So, my fear of furries, mascots, was distorted even more after I watched an episode of this. After I watched an episode of this spinoff of the Goosebumps called R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour. This episode was called The Mascot. Yeah, I know, creative. And it starts abruptly with these two guys talking about how bad they're. Holy shit! What the fuck is that? What? Yeah, no wonder they freak me out so much. What the absolute hell is that thing? Okay, so basically they don't like it? Yeah, no shit, nobody likes that. They decide to fire that mascot and hire a new mascot who ends up getting killed by that old mascot, which I should honestly just give it a name. They called it the Big Yellow. Gross. Anyways, the mascot's head ends up in a reference I don't think any child would get, to be honest, but it sure is creepy. I like the creepy atmosphere in the basement area, you know, where the mascot lives, basically. But the logic of this episode doesn't really make any sense to me. Like, when this dude investigates for the last time, he busts into the room and almost gets caught. And then he gets locked in the room, and seconds later, some kind of fart smoke just enters the room to kill him. I mean, what is that? Sorry, didn't mean to turn this into some kind of review, but I just had to complain about that a little. Anyways, let's get to the twist, which occurs when he confronts the outfit, which he assumes to be an empty husk until this happens. And the scariest part about this is the ending, because what got to me was the realization of what happened to these children, and presumably what happened to the missing person mentioned in the beginning. They fucking got void! What? Are they getting digested? Or some shit? What the fuck? So, why is this in a kids show? I mean, the implications are the scariest thing about this episode. Oh yeah, you probably don't even know what vor means. Or you do, since it did trend on Twitter that one time. We'll never forget the crimes of Twitter and the BS on child pornography, which is just a whole nother discussion for another video. Either way, this whole episode is probably why I'm still creeped out by even the sight of those things. I'm not even exaggerating, my heart beats like crazy, and I even feel quite faint just by seeing them. And who knows what would happen if I saw one in real life. You know, screw this whole real life metaphor thing, man. Furries are fucking scary.
So, as promised, I'm telling a story today, not really talking about any movie or video game. This is like a real story that happened. I don't remember how old I was, to be totally honest. But so some backstory. Me and my mom, she told me I didn't like eating leftovers after like she cooked them. Like if it wasn't, I saw it being cooked, like it's fresh. Like I was a bougie little kid. So what she would do, when we would go to the movie theater, she would bring leftovers. She'd bring the leftovers, and like she had to warm them up and keep them in this like container. And like I would just eat the leftovers because I couldn't see that they were leftovers. I just knew in my little 7-year-old, 6-year-old mind, food, warm food, I'm gonna eat it. So I'm just in there, you know, eating the leftovers. And that's how we would like, I don't know, we would just always spend time going to the movies or to the beach or whatever. And it's weird. So keep in mind, this entire story, keep in mind, my mom does not remember any part of this. Like, she says that it didn't happen. And I'm like, what? No, it did happen. I know it happened. It was too real for it to not be true. And like, I even asked her now. Like, when I initially asked or brought it up, it was like a couple years back. And even to this day, like, she just, no, that never happened. I'm like, yeah, it did. But we go back and forth, and it's not even like varying details. Like the entire encounter, like the entire situation, the whole story never happened to her. But yeah, we went to the movies, and we get out the car, and we're headed in there, and I got some weird vibe. And I just kind of turn, and I see this man. He's just walking up, and I was like, all right, well, maybe he's coming to the movies as well, right? So we get in line and we go and get some tickets. I forgot what movie we were watching, but we get the tickets. Guy pulls up right behind us in line, and I get this weird vibe. Like I just feel like something's off. Like when you can't. It's like that sixth sense. You can't like explain it, but just something feels wrong. It's like that ultra instinct. But Julien, you gotta throw the music. Also, cut this part out. Like, don't. He's not gonna cut this out. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. I set it up for him. But anyway, yeah. So like, we get into the movie theater, and I remember hearing that he asked for the same movie thing. And it was weird because what my parents would do, especially my mom, we wouldn't watch movies when they first came out. At least back then, we were broke. Not really, but kind of. So we'd wait till like the movie was pretty much like nobody was going to be there. And I don't know if it was cheaper or whatever, right? But there was not going to be a whole lot of people watching that movie. But this man just gets the same movie as we did. And it was weird, Like, and me as a kid, I don't know pretty much anything. But it just felt wrong. So we go, and we're getting food. We get popcorn, I think. Or maybe we didn't. No, we didn't. Got in line, and we were going to get something. And it surprised me because we never get anything. Because as I said, we're broke. But not really. But yeah. We were sitting there, and I was excited. And the guy pulls up, and he's sitting right behind us in line. And my mom just kind of grips my hand. And I was like, okay, like this is weird. Like it just feels like something's wrong. So she's like, actually, don't worry about it. I got something. And I was like, oh, like kind of upset. And I was kind of upset with the guy for making, I don't know, like it was like some inner conversation I had with myself that I didn't fully understand yet, Like, man, that guy's being weird and like he's making me and my mom uncomfortable. But like not having the understanding, it was just that feeling. So we get into the movie theater, we sit in like the middle, and this guy sits, like I say 2 rows behind us, but in the same seats, but just 2 rows behind us. And we're sitting there, we're watching the movie and whatever. So he's sitting right behind us, and we're sitting there, we're watching the movie. My mom's giving me like, I think it was like pasta or something like that. But we're sitting there watching the movie, and my mom's like, just kind of she starts packing stuff up. I'm just like, okay. Not gonna say anything. And she's like, hey, do you have to use the bathroom? And I was like, no. And she said, okay, you have to use the bathroom. And we get up, and like she takes me, and we go out, and she picks up her bags and everything, and like, we head towards the bathroom. And then we go into the women's restroom, and we go into the stall, and she closes the stall, locks it, and she stands, like, so, I don't know why, but there's, like, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me, but I think there's a toilet seat that came down. So she picked me up, and we stood on it, and my mom's really short, so, like, you couldn't, like, the way that it was set up, the door, you couldn't see over the door, but, like, the very bottom, like, you couldn't really see underneath it, like, them weird kids that be looking under. But she stood on it, like, holding me, and I'm, like, getting that weird feeling, but not understanding what's going on, and 2 seconds later, the guy walks in. Like, you can just see his boots, and he's walking around, looking around the stall, and he's, like, pushing stalls open, he, like, kind of shakes ours, and, like, I was gonna say something, because I was scared, my mom just covers my mouth, and he's sitting there, and he's, like, moving around with all the different stalls. He sat there for what? It felt like an eternity. Like, and it could have been, like, 2 minutes, really, because, like, a grown man in the middle of a women's restroom with no kid beside him, like, you just look really weird, dude. Really weird. Even if you had a kid, like, what are you doing in here? So he probably left pretty fast, but it felt like we sat there, and she just held her hand over my mouth for, like, an hour, and we didn't say nothing. And he eventually gives up, he leaves, and it's, like, we waited, I want to say, and again, time felt, like, really long, pause, but, like, as a kid, like, an hour feels like 12 years, because you just haven't experienced that many hours in your life. So it just takes up more of like, you understand. But it just felt like we were sitting there for forever. And we could have been sitting there for like 10, 15 minutes. And then my mom took me. No words were exchanged. We go out the bathroom, out the front door, into the car, and drive home. And it was just, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it was so weird. And bringing it up now, because I had thought about it the other day, because we were talking about some other crazy stories that have happened, and I can talk about these in future childhood traumas, but she doesn't recall anything. She's like, no, that never happened. And it bothers me, because it's like, no, I know that happened, because like, you covered my mouth, the guy was out there, he was waiting on us, and like, I was shaking, like I was in fear, like I didn't know what was going on, like I wanted to fight him, but like, what is a 7-year-old gonna do fighting a grown man? He's gonna get thrown across the room like a Barbie doll. Like, there's nothing I can do. I don't know. It just seemed, I don't know. I just don't have words for it. Like, some of these stories that I think about, like, there's one in particular. Every time I tell a story, my eyes start watering like crazy, and eventually they just start pouring. Like, it is that weird of a story, because it was, my parents weren't there. My brother and sister were babies. It was just me, and that was it. No one's ever going to understand that story on the same level, except for me. It's like when you're hanging out with, like, 2 people at your friend's house for a sleepover, and one of them passes out, and you and your friend stay up, and, like, some stuff happens while you're playing the game, and, like, you explain it to him when he wakes up, like, dude, like, I couldn't replicate that if I wanted to, but it was just crazy. Like, they're never going to fully understand how that moment felt, because they just weren't there for it. And it's like, every time I tell that story to anyone ever, it's like, no one's going to understand how weird that was but me, no matter what happens. So, I don't know. Like, I got plenty of stories to tell, but that one in particular was probably like, it's definitely top 5 weirdest stuff that's ever happened to me.
Hey guys, it's me. Welcome to the second episode of the show where I embarrass myself for charity. Last time we did some embarrassing stuff, and this time I think it got even worse, to be completely honest. But it was fun. I enjoyed it, and once again, it's for a good cause. So I may be saying